Is there something that you found surprising you didn't see coming?
Oh, yeah. Uh, I guess I'd gotten a little bit of a heads up to it. Unqualified demos was one of those where we were like, what? Really? Like 1 in 3? That's the average? Like half of our respondents said that more than 1 in 3 uh, demos is unqualified. That's a huge time sink. Like, what is going on? And another, there are a couple of others. For instance, the seeing so many this year. We talked about quota, seeing so many SEs carrying quota. Um, I don't know if some people are shocked to see that many SEs carrying quota, and some people are shocked that there are people who don't carry quota. So it kind of depends on which end you're coming from. And there are some others about compensation, what happens to compensation over years of experience as a practitioner. Got some great insight into watching it rise and then taper off and that kind of thing. So I think that's going to be really valuable for people to be able to see.
So even Benny and I were both like jotting down notes like crazy, just just to follow up. So 1 to 3 non-qualified demos. Did they explain how that happens, or like, is it that?
So the question we actually asked was, what percentage of your live demos would you describe as unqualified or underqualified? And that was it. And so they marked a percentage, right?
Right.
And so specifically the question was, what percentage of your product demonstrations would you classify as unqualified or underqualified? And the fact that there are just massive, like I say, the median is 30%. That means half of the responses were 30% or higher and half were 30% or lower. And it's definitely, it's just crazy to me to see that much, that kind of a strain on the time of an organization that if you could point to one problem that's really, really tough in pre-sales, it's scale, right? It's being able to meet the demand with something other than just hiring more people. Just hire more people. Oftentimes that's the only solution that you can see to increasing demand on pre-sales.
This is such an interesting problem. Like a lot of people say, "Oh, I want to be part of, as an SE, I want to be part of discovery calls
Mm-hmm.
to be able to qualify calls." But then I talk to a lot of companies that don't have that system. They say, "Oh, they don't want to waste our time and bringing us into the discovery call." I'm like, "Yeah, but I think they're wasting your time making you do a
Isn't that
demo
right?
that's not
Yes.
qualified." Because the discovery call, and within half hour you can tell if it's qualified or non-qualified.
Sometimes within 2 minutes,
Yeah,
right? You can tell.
and then you can dig in deeper if you need to. But
Yeah.
a demo, you're like, unless it's the same demo you're doing every single time, then they don't need you. Honestly, they can use consensus, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're gonna have to spend time preparing for it, creating a story, I find that insane that they just don't get SEs involved earlier.
Yeah, and very often, you hear this refrain commonly throughout the industry, but the AE will say, "Well, I did qualify them," and they're maybe talking about BANT or something like that, and it's a very different discovery to what pre-sales is doing. As a matter of fact, one of the questions that we asked about key activities this year. Okay. So, and by key activities, what we're talking about is the question was, which key activities, max of 4, so you could multi-select up to 4 answers, which key activities would have the greatest impact on your success if you or your team, if you're a leader, could spend more time executing them? In other words, what activities move the needle the most, right? And the number 1 was discovery. The number 1 response was discovery. If we could spend more time, if we had time back in our work week, this is where we could spend it to move the needle the most.
Like I don't know, Benny and I, we've been preaching about discovery for a long time, because even those 2 qualified demos, if you didn't do the discovery, your demo probably didn't answer the question that they were asking.
Right?
Yeah, because I've told the story before. I've been to demos where my sales guy qualified it and the information was completely wrong, and I had to kind of spin something up from like out of nowhere. And most of the time it didn't lead to a sale
Oh man.
because I wasn't part of the discovery, because I could have asked simple questions that would point me in the right direction. I could have created a story. I could have figured out what the, like, when they talk about pain points, for at least in my industry, salespeople don't know the pain points because they're not in testing. They sell stuff and they
Right.
don't know, like, if the test manager tells them something about what they do, they will not they will not register them as a pain point unless they were in that area at some point in their career. So
Right. Exactly. It's so and this is why you see oftentimes. Um, so we also asked about where your organization hired their last 10 SEs from, and one of the what we find is that oftentimes they're hired directly from the industry that they're serving, right, as opposed to from a sales background necessarily. They're hired sometimes. I actually anecdotally, do you know the guys over at the Access Group? Uh, Adam Freeman and those guys. I'm not sure
yep.
if you're familiar with it. Oh, okay, great.
uh,
Um,
he has a podcast, Two Peas in a Pod, I think.
oh, okay, yeah. So he's a pre-sales leader over at Access Group, and I remember him telling me about one of their SEs who was in the hospitality industry, and he was a chef. Um, that was his background, right? And
Yep.
so he could see, and this is part of why it takes so long oftentimes to mint a fully capable pre-sales rep, is because you have to have that combination of industry fluency,
Yep.
um, and and that industry fluency isn't something that you often find in the AE as much as it is in the pre-sales rep. So that discovery has to involve pre-sales.